It's 2022, bitches. Still, again, I guess it was 2022 last time you heard from us. I don't know. It's almost an agreement time. We're going to do what we do. We're going to talk about what we talk about. Some pretty exciting local madness news came on Friday, so we'll talk about that. See if Sam even knows what I'm talking about when we get there. We're almost in agreement. Almost in agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Get our website, almostinagreement.com. I have released the jobs description sheet. It's not finalized. It's not complete. It's not 100%, but as I'm filling them in, I'm just leaving them up so you guys can access them there. There'll be a link on the homepage for that. I got to work on that as well. All the episodes are on that webpage too. Or you can go to your favorite podcast provider. Or your favorite podcast provider, please give us a like and share, a 5-star review, a good rating, whatever it is that helps people hear more about us. So yeah, other than that, it's the first full weekend in January 2022. So there's some playoff football going on, which we talked a little bit about last week again. You know, the two least sporty people of the group, but whatever. We'll talk about that, sure. Why not? Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Hey, that was pretty good timing.
You like that? I'm working on it. I'm practicing. Like I sit at home when nobody's around and I just play it and talk. That's not true at all. I don't.
You've heard the intro song a few times now.
Yes.
You know about how long it is?
Well, that's spicy. Excuse me. Yeah, I do. I knew how long it is. About how long it is. The problem is I wanted to include an advertisement, so that has to change my formula completely whenever I get advertisers. My timing. Really, it's just tease the show less and tease the advertiser. Just tease what I'm going to talk about.
No, you just start with the ad, then the intro.
Right. Or that. I don't know. Yeah. But really, it's just product placement. That's the sneaky part. Like King's Family Distillery is what I'm drinking on tonight, which I paid full price for, so it's not a sponsor. But Pop's Liquor Store's got a whole deal with them where they do special batches and special blends. I just feeling ducky and bought a bottle. Whew. It's got a little something going on. It's exciting. I enjoy it. Anyway.
Did you try that bottle I've got down there?
Yeah, I had some of the, Old Forester?
Yeah.
Had a little nip on that last night. I finished my Bullet last night, my Bullet Rye.
I don't like rye. I don't care for rye whiskey.
Well, this King's Family is a rye, so it's called Ryconic. Ryconic. Twice barreled.
Like a Rayconic Jr.?
I don't know. Twice barreled straight rye whiskey, aged 6 years, 0 months.
We took it out of one barrel and put it in the other barrel.
53.9% alcohol by volume. That's 107.9 proof. Very specific.
We couldn't get it to even numbers. We just said, screw it, just write down what it says.
Yeah, I knew that's a normal thing that they do. But that's weird. King's Family Distillery is out of Sevierville, Tennessee, but it is distilled in Indiana. Well, learned something by read a label. But a lot of companies do that, regardless of the type of liquor. Especially if it's an aged stuff, like vodka and gin don't count. But
right,
whiskeys especially when you age them, their alcohol volume or their ABV or their concentration of alcohol, however you want to look at it, fluctuates depending on the conditions of the barrel they're in and all sorts of weird stuff. And so a lot of times they'll blend it down. So they'll have one barrel that's really strong and one barrel that's really not strong, and they blend them together to get it to, like for Jack Daniels or whatever, that's thousands of gallons and barrels at the same time that they're blending. That's one of the things that they do to blend it down to a consistent alcohol by volume. So the big story, like right off the bat, I think most recent big story locally is David Hayes got arrested on Friday.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think it was on Friday. What do you know? What do you tell me? Teach me.
Teach you? Mm-hmm. The article I read said that going into, I guess, he was there because they're having open meetings, that he was there to was protesting. I think it was someone that died which I read about that too. There was I think it was a man that died in custody.
Yes, a Mr. Bailey,
in between,
I believe. Yeah.
In between, like being arrested and taken to I don't know if they were on the way to the
died
hospital
in custody, whatever.
when they noticed he was unconscious or something, or if they got to the jail and realized he was unconscious.
Right. Whatever the specifics is, he died in custody, which that in and of itself for a lot of people, especially activists, that by itself is a problem, period.
Right.
Like, how is it possible that people are dying in custody? And yeah, so anyway, continue.
But there was... I think the officer that arrested him said he saw him coming out of the meeting, but I guess was made aware that afternoon that there was a warrant out for, I think it was inciting a riot and something else.
Yep, inciting a riot was definitely one. Mm-hmm. And it was
what was alluded
blocking blocking some sort of thoroughfare was part of it. Okay. So that was coming out of the Anthony.
Was a warrant out for his arrest.
Right. So apparently some of the things that had happened with the Anthony Thompson protests, or whatever you want to call them, that happened then, he got a couple of warrants for. So
yeah. And there was some other little bits about him like getting arrested. And
right. He has an assault he has a prior assault on an officer as well at some point, I think, is one of the things that was mentioned in one of the stories I read.
Yeah, something mentioned, I think in that altercation Friday, that he supposedly tried to spit at a police officer, and they were trying to put
they bagged him,
little spit mask on him.
Yeah. And so I did hear about that part, and he alleges that they assaulted him while restrained in custody in privacy, which of course there's no body cams, and it says so.
Yeah, I did read that. Yeah, there was no body cam.
Like, it's to the point where the sheriff's office specifically put out a Facebook post on it.
Try to get ahead of the story, I guess.
I mean, like, they literally put out his mugshot. Let me pull it up real quick. But yeah, I mean,
after he was arrested.
Yeah, after he was arrested, it was just 4 pictures. There's no statement, just 4 pictures. It's his mugshot and the 3 pages of the report from the incident report, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. So. But what was interesting too about it, and because I follow a lot of these different people, parts of it, Constance, who was running for governor apparently, was there, and she was pitching a fit about it. Is there was not like
was this the same woman that put out the video saying that she was Anthony Thompson's girlfriend's aunt or something like that? Or,
she was.
I think I'm mixing her up with somebody else.
I don't remember that. She is very active, and specifically continues to be very active on the Anthony Thompson Jr. case. But the
there was somebody that put out a video that said she was the aunt, and then apparently his girlfriend's family came out and was like, that woman's not related to his girlfriend at all. Like, I think she was a local community activist, but she was telling fibs that she was related to the girlfriend, and was
talking to the family when she wasn't directly talking to the family or something like that. But one of the things mentioned that I saw that was interesting is, again, like you said, the meeting itself was a input on a new police chief, because Chief Thomas is retiring this coming summer or whatever, and they're shopping for a replacement.
I think the next person down declared retirement or is retiring as well.
Yeah.
Like one of the assistant chiefs.
Well, that deputy chief, that one deputy chief quit because he has a bunch of bullshit, and that was the one we were talking about a couple weeks ago, or I thought we talked about it.
I know, this is a different guy.
Oh, well, apparently there's problems. But one of the things, as part of the meeting, they didn't have KPD there on purpose to try to make the meetings more open and more people more comfortable about discussing whatever. And so Knox County showed up. And so one of the things too I saw, and there's no verification on this, but the rumor is that the sheriff's office went in, and the people who had signed up to speak, and they took that piece of paper that people signed up to speak on and checked it against the database if anybody had any warrants or anything. And not that is or is not why they decided to arrest David then and there. But as a pretty good comment that somebody made on one of the posts I was reading on, it's like, it's a pretty smart time to arrest somebody, because once they're in the city-county building, they've been through security, they don't have a weapon on them, there's no concern about that, and so that takes that element out of the equation, which is, I mean, I guess kind of smart. Although somebody else had the point of, he ran for the city council. he was at all these different public forums, and he was doing all these different things while running. And this was after those warrants had been issued, and they didn't arrest him then. Why now? Why this event? Did they decide it was a good time to do it? So
I guess it would depend on when the warrant was issued. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the rules on that kind of thing, but I mean, but what I think the News Sentinel article missed the mark pretty hard as far as I took it, because I was reading the News Sentinel article on it, and it barely touches this Mr. Bailey. Let's just look it up. Excuse me, Robert Bailey, who's the guy. He was a traffic stop. Had some outstanding warrants, so they took him into custody, and somewhere in custody is when he died. But it was something along the lines of, like, he was unresponsive in the back of the squad car or in the paddy wagon or something like that. So they went, instead of to the jail, they went to the hospital and was pronounced dead on the scene or whatever. But so my understanding of it is the big part of why obviously, I think David Hayes and that kind of group was going to this meeting anyway to put their input on the new police chief conversation. But I think it was escalated functionally because of literally this guy, Mr. Bailey, had died in custody the night before, or maybe 2 nights before this meeting. And so this was the first public meeting where this group could go and say, hey, we're not okay with people dying in your custody. And so I think that added a little bit more... what's the word I'm looking for here? Energy to the room. But, I mean, I don't know. It's pretty weird. I watched a couple of the videos where, I mean, he's like, I get it. He's like, you guys are going to arrest me. I'll make you work for it. Like, apparently that's a quote. He said that. Yeah, I heard it in one of the videos. He's like, you're going to have to work for it. And so he just went limp and made him carry him. Like all the way down that bridge hallway.
I think I did hear that.
Yeah, all the way down that bridge hallway or whatever. But I don't know. It's like, see, that's one of those things to me where I get, and God forbid I ever have a situation.
People in that situation where they just went and got like a wheelchair. It's like, all right, if you're not going to walk, like, we'll just have you sit in a wheelchair and we'll wheel you out to the car. That way we don't have to carry you.
Right, but I think one of the problems that I think is getting missed in this, and I think this is one of those, nobody really knows what the rules are at play here. It's like, I mean, that by definition is non-compliance. You're not complying with the officer when they say, walk with me to the squad car. And you say, nah, I'm just going to lay down. That's non-compliance. And so what does that do for the, lack of a better word, rules of engagement for those officers as because at this point they have him directly detained. So now they have to take him somewhere, get him processed, do that whole thing. Can't just leave him there on the floor until he decides he wants to walk. They have to move him. And like you said, they could have got a wheelchair or something. That's another option they could have brought into it. But like, since you are now clearly and intentionally and with reason, as far as I'm concerned, disobeying the direct orders of the cop, does that change what they're allowed to do physically with you in custody because you're refusing to comply with, hey, walk where I tell you to walk? Because then because he's alleged that they kind of beat on him a little bit and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that they did or didn't. I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't. But when at least a couple of the cops who are pretty chunky are trying to
say if they should or shouldn't.
Do what?
You can't say if they should or shouldn't.
What? Beat on him? No, they shouldn't beat on him. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to say that.
All right. So clarify. I don't want your words to be misconstrued.
Whatever. If they did or didn't, or, again, I guess my point being is like, at least a couple of those cops looked a little bit chunky. Maybe it was body armor that made them look so chunky. I don't know, but they seem to be struggling to carry him. And it's like, well, he wouldn't walk when we told him to walk, so we tried to carry him. There are other people yelling and screaming. We're trying to get through and do all this stuff, and we dropped him one time. Not on purpose, but is that like, does that come off as they were being rough with him? And it becomes a question of intent. Did you do it on purpose? Did you not? Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Who knows? We don't know. We can't know. But I guess my point is I understand David Hayes' move because that's a classic civil disobedience move, is to go limp and make them drag you out.
Right. Have a sit in.
Right.
You're just like, I'm not going to get up and move. I'm not resisting, but.
Right. But does that open the door for some to a new gray area where some abuses can happen. Because it's a weird, I don't know. I guess that to me is it's a weird spot. It's like it's the same. I guess it's the same argument on the Rittenhouse thing. Is that did he? Because if that's a valid argument, because that was an argument on the Rittenhouse thing. He shouldn't have been there. He went there with intent to cause a problem. He wanted to go there to shoot people. Right. That was one of the arguments on why Rittenhouse was guilty and stuff like that. David Hayes went to this meeting wanting to cause a ruckus. I assert that. I don't know that for a fact, but that's my assumption. He went there knowing he had warrants out. He went there knowing he'd be interacting, and he has a history of, he got dragged out of one of the county commission meetings right after the Thompson shooting, for lack of a word. It's like this isn't new territory for him. This is a regular thing for him, and I kudos for it. It's important to him, and he's worth it. And it's worth it to him to go through all this strife personally, because he sees a problem that needs fixed, and this is the method that he has decided is the best way to do it. I'm not going to agree or disagree that it's the best method, but I guess my point is the same people that would make the argument that Rittenhouse doesn't get to claim self-defense because he went into the situation wanting the situation, that same argument would apply here, that David Hayes doesn't get to pretend like he got, or right, that he went into the situation knowing that there was going to be a situation, and so by putting himself in that situation, he is not allowed to cry foul when he has to deal with it. Does that make sense? I don't agree with the argument. I'm just saying that I don't agree with that argument on either one of those. I just think that's one of those arguments that people have made. And I would argue that the same people that made it why that makes Rittenhouse guilty, they would make it that doesn't excuse the behavior that David Hayes had to deal with.
All right, but I don't know if he went into the situation presuming that trouble was going to be caused, or
I don't know.
There was going to be any
I haven't got a chance to talk to him, and I really, really, really do want to talk to him. I called him a bunch of times when he was city council, but apparently the media doesn't treat him very well historically. So why would he think we would do any better?
Right. I would presume that any social activist, their main goal is to get their voice heard and not to just stir the pot.
And but he did it. Then he won because he. I doubt that police chief search meeting would have got any real media attention had he not gotten arrested and had the whole ordeal about it.
I've seen two separate articles that talked about it being, it wasn't like every meeting, but there were going to be some open meetings when the city council was going to be discussing looking for
there's like seven
police
of them.
chief.
Yeah, there's like seven of them going on. It's like a special committee. It's not the city council.
Right.
But it's like a special committee that's doing it. But there's like seven of them. One of them was supposed to be Thursday. There was supposed to be one on Thursday morning, and they canceled that for weather, like everything else in town.
Yeah.
Which I didn't get any time off work. You didn't get any time off work. Our bosses suck.
I got an hour off.
Oh,
actually, I didn't.
You took an hour off. Let's be fair.
Yeah. I didn't go to the other job either.
Ah, all right.
Well, they said they were leaving at 12. I don't normally go in until 10.
Yeah, it kind of seems like a waste of day.
Well, I got on. I was like watching the news. Everyone was saying that, like early afternoon was when it was going to start snowing and temperature was dropping fast. I was like, hey, I don't want to get stuck out there and then trying to leave in the middle of it.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we're going to leave. We're leaving in a couple hours anyway. I was like, all right, sounds good to me.
Well, I was out in it all day Friday, all day Thursday. There was one spot on Friday that got a little squirrely, but 90% of why it got squirrely is because I could tell it was a little rough, and then I went and made it squirrely.
Yeah.
I
wanted to test it a little bit.
All right, just get those tires spinning, got that back in, kind of fishtailing around, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
having a good time with it, but
it's too many bad spots.
It's cold. It's really cold. I don't mind.
Right. Yeah, they said it was the coldest day in, I guess, a year, so 365 days or whatever.
Yeah, because I think usually our cold is usually late January, early February. Things like the height of the cold weather traditionally around here.
Right.
So we'll see if we get another one. It's still cold. But
oh yeah,
alas.
Did you hear about the other state legislature that made Actually, it ended up making national news, I guess, in the oddities section that I read. I saw a local story about it.
Tell me about it. I don't know if I heard about it.
I think Jeremy Faison is his name.
Uh-huh.
He's a congressman, I think, out of the Johnson City area.
Okay.
But was at a high school.
Oh yeah, pants the dude
basketball game.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
He didn't actually pants him. He apparently tried to pants him, but I don't know if it was before he got ejected, and then that's when he did it, or if he got ejected because he was arguing and tried to pants the ref. Apparently, he was unsuccessful in the attempted pantsing.
He looks like an actor to me. I'm trying to think of who. Like that guy's got like the thickest jaw.
I can see that.
And I'm trying to remember who he looks like, but it's like maybe a wrestler turned actor or actor turned wrestler. Like he's got that face.
I can't think of too many people he would remind me of. I did see him when I was watching more of like the State House and stuff. He was on there pretty often. I guess either motioning bills or sponsoring bills.
What? Is it okay if I play VR? Yeah, just keep the volume down.
I can't say I cared for a lot of the things that he was saying on the state floor, but that's just me.
How does that even, like, okay, so fine, you got mad at bad ref, whatever. Okay, that's got its own issues. You're a public figure, you should know better. But that's your solution? Like, of all the things.
His response?
I acted the fool.
Yeah, some of it was like some broken English. I can't remember what it was, but it was like, I was reading it the other day, and I was like, this is hilarious.
Right, totally.
It was like he put out like in a tweet, it was like, I was wrong, I was bad wrong, or I was wrong bad. I think I was bad wrong. Like,
totally lost my junk. It was completely stupid of me. I acted the fool tonight. I'm hoping to be able to make it right. Again, get mad at referee and get upset, yell at him. That's a big enough problem for who you are. But you're gonna I just don't understand that. Like punch it. Like if you punched him, it's still. I'm not saying it's okay, but it makes more sense. You punch or shove or. Yeah.
Like at one point where you're like, I'm going to show this guy. I'm going to try to pull his pants down.
Right. Okay. So here's his tweet. Found his tweet. For years, I thought how wrong it was when a parent loses their temper at a sporting event. It's not Christian and it's not mature, and it's embarrassing to the child have always been my. It's embarrassing to the child have always been my thoughts. Unfortunately, I acted the fool tonight and lost my temper on a ref. I was wanting him to fight me. Totally lost my junk and got booted from the gym. I've never really lost my temper for all to see, but I did tonight, and it was completely stupid of me. Emotions getting in the way of rational thoughts are never good. I hope to be able to find the ref and ask for forgiveness. I was bad wrong. I mean, I don't know if that's the same quote that you saw, but it's not good. Yeah. But
I guess I've just never heard bad wrong next to each other.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Just trying to emphasize how wrong, not just wrong, bad wrong.
I was wanting him to fight me.
Yeah. Right. Again, that makes sense. But again, I don't know that pantsing somebody is the way to get them to fight you. You like push them or you take a swing at them. I find that part odd.
I don't know if like he had a kid there.
I would assume so.
That was his alma mater.
This is from people.com/politics, where I'm reading this story. Speaking of, like, over here on the sidebar is talking about the Marjorie Taylor Greene got kicked off of Twitter. Surprise.
Oh, yeah, I did see that. Her official Twitter handle or whatever.
I don't know. I think it's weird. It's weird. It's just weird. It's just like, because my understanding of it, as I've read the stories on it and stuff like that, is the tweets that got her in trouble were for being misleading or whatever. And it's like, okay, that's fine. If that's the standard, but that's not the standard. It's only misleading when X. And it's only if it's misleading on Corona, whatever. It's only misleading when it's on this, that, and the other. It's not a universal. It doesn't seem to be that Twitter has this is our standard, and our standard is you have to be 100% truthful in your text or your tweets. and then go out and apply. It seems that it's a selective application is what it seems like to me. Which, again, Twitter can do what they want. I just think, let's be honest about it, it's selective application.
Well, I mean, they've done it in the past in bullying. And, I mean, the whole coronavirus thing, of course, has only been going on a couple of years now. But they have started adding in there, prior warnings. It's not just we cut you off. I'm sure she was warned at least 2 or 3 times. And like, hey, you've been temporarily banned for spreading COVID misinformation.
Oh, sure. I mean, her goal was to get banned. I mean, let's be honest about it.
Sure, that makes her look better.
Right. She's
look at me. They kicked me off.
Again, I mean, and for that's the thing to me that I think that's so weird about it is like if you actually took a second to think about it, if you're Twitter and you don't like her politics and you think she's a bad person or whatever it is, and you don't like her using your platform, let's go like the full libertarian, that Twitter is a private industry. They can do what they want with their service. They provide a service. They don't have to allow people to use their service. They can kick people off however they want to, right? And so at least if the presumption is we're going to kick people off that are lying about certain things or we're going to kick people off that we don't like their politics, it doesn't seem to win in the goal of whatever the end is. We're making martyrs out of them, It's what ends up happening because to the people she's talking to with her tweets, she gets kicked off. Everybody that is misinformed by her in the first place now believes her even more because she was right. They're out to get me. They're going to kick me off of here for telling you guys the truth. And then they kick her off. And then the people that are already starting to listen to her now believe her stronger because she's been martyred by the system. Where the real answer would be to have people argue the point, try to get other people that have other insights on a particular topic to display the truth to people and let people understand the truth better instead of just shutting up the people that they listen to. If it's a function, if it's a matter of function.
And her supporters could also view it in the opposite by leaving her on there, that Twitter and Facebook are validating her tweets. Like, well, see, no, they would have taken her off if it was spreading false information. So now what she's saying is true.
Right. And so
you could look at that either way.
Yeah, again, but that's only because Twitter has the history of doing things, of pushing people on and off and stuff like that the way they do. If they didn't have the history of that, then if Twitter was just the free speech haven and people could say whatever they want to on there, the idea that Twitter leaving that person alone validates them is not true. Because you don't have a history of them. Well, we kick off people that are liars. We let people that aren't liars stay on. Well, then if we let this person stay on, we're validating that they're true. But we've never done that before, so we're not. It's not a check. It's not a verification or a condemnation of this person's statement. It's just a person talking on Twitter. But since they have the history of manipulating who is and who isn't on there, then you're right. Now they can make that argument and says, well, if they let them stay on there, then they must be telling the truth. But that wouldn't historically be accurate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess kind of. I mean, I don't know when censorship really started becoming a thing. I think it was something that was asked of social media because I would think that it kind of started with the whole kind of anti-bullying campaigns with, I guess, going back to Obama. I think a lot of people started asking social media, like, hey, this is happening in your space.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like we were kind of asking them to moderate it. It wasn't necessarily like parents, hey, we can't watch our kids all the time. Will you watch our kids for us?
Right. Again, I get that, but I don't know. Okay. I don't have a response to that other than to say that yes, that could be the impetus of when social media started. I think the question, really, the big one was the 2016 election and the Russian interference conversation and all that kind of thing. And Project, what was it called? The Internet Research Foundation, Internet Research Company. You know that story?
Yeah. I think it was just called like the Internet Research Forum.
Anyway, which is apparently it was some like just Russian troll farm that they went out and. Like, literally, it was you come to work and you go on and make accounts on Twitter and Facebook or whatever.
Or just say random shit and see what sticks.
Right. Well, right. Or, like rile up a group of like Rogan talks about one all the time that he finds the most obviously egregious crazy one, because he had some lady from like I think it was New York Times or something like that ended up writing a book on it. She started working on it as a story, but like she went out and like she went through all these different tweets and all this different stuff that they and kind of followed the trail or whatever. And it's like, you know, they would have like a small group in, you know, Kazakhstan or whatever doing their thing, and they would one of the big ones that he always jokes about is like somewhere in Texas, they had a Second Amendment group that they were a part of that they set up a rally for on some street corner on some certain day. And on that same day, on the opposite street corner, a different group, but still out of this internet research company, had a Muslim rights or like a Muslim respect group or something like that they set up, and they grew and they put an event on the same day right across the street from the Second Amendment group, you know, right. Knowing that these two groups of people probably won't get along very well.
Right.
And, you know,
there was a lot of information what came out of some of the troll bots and stuff from other countries.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily, I mean, even going back to the 2016 election, like, you know, they found meddling, but it was like meddling on both sides. It wasn't
right, which is what this right. But the point being is like that's what I think that's
just stirring up shit.
I think that's when politics, political parts of things became more censored on the social media when it came out of the bullying and the protecting kids kind of thing, like you're saying, and came into right. the normal adult sphere of.
Well, when social media started being used as a weapon, they were like, hey, we got to figure out how to stop, you know, these fake accounts that are just spewing bullshit.
Right.
And then it came into real accounts spewing bullshit.
Right.
And they're like, all right, we can cancel these fake accounts, but then, you know, it gets into that gray area of free speech when you're canceling personal accounts and whatnot.
Right. Which again, I'm of the ilk that they are a independent company and they can do with their service as they see fit. I just think it's gross that it's not that. I think it's just gross that they're not, that it's not clear. Some people it is very clear. Some people it's not. But it's not clear and universal. Because there are people that'll go on there and, you know, I mean, like YouTube's one of the ones that always cracks me up. Because you can go on YouTube right now and you can watch Flat Earth videos for a week straight. But, you know, they'll take off a video of somebody that says Jan 6 wasn't a insurrection. Shouldn't have said that out loud. We're going to get ours pulled off of YouTube. But like that kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, if YouTube is supposed to moderate what's true and not true, then why does this genre still exist? Because it's so absurd that nobody believes it? Well, obviously there are actual people out there that truly believe the earth is flat. So again, YouTube, if you want to do it, that's fine. It just should be, you know, if this is somebody presenting something as fact when it's a universal not true, then that should go equally across the board.
I mean, it's unreasonable to think they can turn around and be, you know, 24/7 fact police. I think they do, you know, pick certain things that have more danger than others. You know, if someone believes that the earth is flat, that's not really presenting danger to many people.
I don't know. That one guy died trying to prove it.
That was a self-inflicted wound.
Okay, but does that not count as a danger to because he hurt himself because he believed the earth was flat? I mean, that's literally the statement you just made.
I mean, I guess, but I would think people thinking the earth is flat, that would discourage them from not doing it. Outside of, you know, this guy that actually did it, but if they thought the earth was flat, I don't know why they think it would safe to go up in your own rocket-propelled projectile anyway.
I mean, because he was going to come back to, I guess he did come back down, and that was the problem. Oh, bad jokes, I'm sorry.
Just a little too fast. Came in a little too hot.
Came in hot. I don't know. Again, like I said, a little
too flat for him.
I mean, I think you're right, because I think I could, like, I'm making the joke statement I made before that Jan 6 was a Patriot Act or whatever stupid like that does get people pulled off. Won't get us pulled off because we don't have enough people that are going to pay attention to it or get reported or anything like that because they don't have the means to keep up with everything. But then again, that I don't know. That becomes.
I don't know how they do it anyway. I mean, as fast as videos are uploaded,
right? It's just it's untenable to actually truly monitor
when they were taking down certain videos. You know, someone would just add it back in to a different link.
I don't know. When it comes down to there were doctors getting taken off early in the pandemic were bringing up the lab leak theory early on, and that was a no-no thing, and so they were taking those videos down, and now it's become okay to talk about, and it's on there again. But there are people that lost their accounts and had huge fan bases that lost their accounts and are starting from scratch again with new accounts because they dared to hypothesize that this possibly was a lab leak theory, or hypothesize that this was a leak from a lab. Not even in the sense that it was intentionally weaponized version of it. It was just this was a lab mistake. And people
that's not how it was portrayed.
That's not how it was portrayed by who? Because
many people that were making those videos early on.
It was I think it was Eric and Brett Weinstein. They get mad when you call him Steen. One of those two is a biologist, and his hypothesis at the time was like, if you just follow the logic on it, it doesn't make sense that this was a naturally occurring thing. He didn't, as far as I understood his take on it, it was he never took it as this was a weaponized thing. He never took it as this was like an attack by the Chinese. He never took it as any of these other more crazy versions of the lab leak, other than I feel like this probably it is more likely to me that this came out of the lab than it did coming out of a bat in a wet market. And that was his stance very early on, and he lost his YouTube channel for that, and he had like 500,000 subscribers or whatever, which, as I learned a couple weeks ago watching YouTube, if you get like 500,000 listens or views a day, that's like $4,000 to $5,000 a day in income. Okay. But my point being in all that is that he hypothesized about it early. It made sense. It followed logic to him and his understanding of it as a biologist. And since that narrative was not approved by the CDC, essentially, he lost his channel, and that was a big impact on him professionally. That had a big impact on him personally, financially, and all the other things that he is now having to dig his way out of. But it's now a topic we're allowed to talk about. It's still a little bit dicey, but it's okay. It could have come that way. We're still focused on getting through this before we focus on where it came from, but it does follow some logic, and we see how that could be a possibility. Even though Fauci still pushes back pretty hard when people bring it up.
I mean, I have to see the original video, which has already been taken down.
Yeah.
There's a difference between being vague about it and saying, this is what happened.
Well, I mean, the other one, too, the more recent one is the Rogan one. Rogan had Dr.
I mean, also, at that time, there was a lot of violence going on against Asians that I'd say has a direct link to finger being pointed at China.
And anybody punching a Chinese man because a disease might have came from his home country is an idiot and should go to jail.
I mean, they were just going after anybody that looked Asian, period.
Okay, and again, those are people who are idiots and should go to jail for assault. That's
right.
But to blame, I don't know. I don't think that changes anything. I don't know that. I don't know. I guess I have a hard time wholesale believing that person who is dumb enough to go punch a person that looks Asian because they think this virus came from China, which is true. We know it came from China. There was no question of that. But whether the fact that it was a lab leak versus a wet market, whether that person was going to punch a Chinese guy anyway. I don't think that. I think that person was still an idiot, hateful person that's going to go out and punch an Asian person because this came from China, period, not because of lab or bat or whatever.
I mean, the first cases were reported in China. I don't think anyone, they said it's going to be years before we can conclusively figure out where exactly it originated.
I agree, but my point is,
found it in sewage in Italy going back to October and November.
My point is, I mean, I've heard stories, and these are stories that a number of the doctors in said lab were out sick back in like September of 19. Anyway, right. Not important. I don't know anything about that really. But again, point being, the main point of what I was getting to is I don't think the lab leak theory had anything to do with idiots assaulting Asian people. It was idiots assaulting Asian people because this virus came from Asia, period. Doesn't matter what the actual, unless and even if, I don't know, I'm sure there was somebody out there theorizing that it was a weaponized thing that China released on its own people because they knew if they released it on their own people, it would come over to us and then they could kill us with it or something like that. I'm sure somebody's thrown that theory out there. But I don't think that person who was going to assault an Asian person changes, whether it's lab leak or bat. They're just dumb and hate.
Sure.
So that's, that doesn't justify, YouTube's actions to me, is my point. Because, I mean, these are livelihoods nowadays. I mean, it really is, and it's kind of weird, but because like Rogan, not that he needs the money, obviously, but Rogan had an episode a week or so ago where he had Dr. Robert Malone, I believe his name is, who's was apparently, and honestly, a big part of the development of mRNAs, who has been very vocally had taken issue with the way that the vaccine requirements and stuff are going into place and stuff like that. So he's lost his Twitter account, and then Rogan, who only does clips on YouTube now because of his Spotify contract, but all the clips of that video, of that episode, are not on YouTube and have been pulled from YouTube with no explanation, according to Rogan and his people. Because they have the audacity to question the vaccines, or at least the guy that this whole Malone thing, I think, is his whole thing is that the possible effects of the vaccine the negative effects of the vaccine are being underreported, is this guy's kind of shtick, for lack of a better word. That's his whole thing. Is he's like, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't get the vaccine, but he's like, I feel like the CDC and stuff like that is only focusing on the upside and giving you zero of the downside. Here's the downside as I see it in the research that I've done. Blah, 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 blah. That's his whole thing. But all that gets taken away off of YouTube because it's not official narrative. Again, not that Rogan needs the money, but, you know, like, this is a real doctor. He helped develop the program, I guess is what they call it, that we were delivering these vaccines with, the mRNA thing. And he's not allowed to express his concerns with the way we're going about public policy moving forward. I think it's weird. It's not whether he's right or not. It's that he's not allowed to speak. That's what's concerning to me.
Sorry, I was trying to look to see if I can find out what it was he got suspended for.
Who?
Dr. Malone.
Oh. I don't remember what it was either. They talked about it on the episode. I listened to it. But I don't know. I think it's a weird world we're living in. That's all. And this is not. I don't think it helps. I just don't. I don't think it does what. I don't think it's doing what the people that are trying to do with it want. That was a really poor sentence. That sounded like that state senator you were talking about earlier. I don't think it's working the way that they think it's supposed to work. They thought it was going to kill Trump. It didn't. You know, I think it's martyred Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's going to have maybe not a bigger following, but her following is going to be more excited and strengthened by this action. You know, and I think one of the last ones that got her in trouble was she had a screenshot of some CDC data and said, "See, this is why blah 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 doesn't work," or like I think it was something illogical, but or not semi-logical, I guess is what it was. I think, and I don't remember exactly, but I think it was she had some CDC data that was showing how many vaccinated and boosted people were getting Omicron or something like that, and her statement was, "See, it just proves that the vaccine doesn't even really work." Again, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with her statement. I'm just saying that she was discussing in her point of view what she is her understanding of what the data is showing her, and that's what got her kicked. That's one of the ones that on her final string that got her kicked off.
Yeah, I didn't see what her last post were or anything like that. Somebody I follow on Twitter.
Me either.
Because I don't do that tweet bullshit.
You don't do the tweeter.
Don't do them tweeters.
I mean, we have one for the show, and I try to put. I don't like. I just don't. I'm old. I don't get it. Like I can't. I don't understand. I don't use it enough to be comfortable in what I'm doing when I'm messing around on it.
Right.
Like I don't understand how to interact on it. I'm old, and you still use Facebook.
It's just like an instant message you send to everybody that's following you.
Right. But like I can't figure out who comes up when and how many people I follow and how many people are following me. The Planned Parenthood was arson. I as much as I railed against the automatic.
It's changed to suspected. It's suspected arson.
Okay, well it's officially suspected arson as opposed to generally suspected by the populace, like the actual fire chief and some TBI or whatever.
I saw that made national news as well.
Yeah, as it should. It's the total loss is going to be, I think they said like $2.5 million to rebuild, which I don't know.
Yeah, I think it said like $2.2 million on top of, I guess, the cost of renovations already.
I mean, that's sunk, I guess. You already spent that.
If it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the, I don't know.
They said that's why I think they said it was partially why the fire was so bad, was because it was in the middle of construction. So I guess,
like water's turned off, so fire. Right, and the water's turned off, so the fire suppression system didn't work.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's true.
And insurance gets weird when you're in the middle of a renovation because it doesn't insure building materials. So if you have like, a stack of wood in the middle of the room because you're about to frame out the inside of the building,
right?
It doesn't count because it's not framed in yet. It only counts because when it's part of the building, not when it's in the building.
I feel insure established structure.
Right. It doesn't matter. They're going to get enough donations to get it built twice over by the time it gets to the point where they're ready to start working on it.
Yeah, it's possible.
I don't know how funding works at Planned Parenthood and stuff like that, but I know that there's a GoFundMe local that already went up, and it's gotten into the close to six figures, if I heard correctly, in the first week of being up, and that was before the arson part came out. The official arson part came out. This is when it was still just everybody assuming it was arson.
Right.
Which it could still not be arson, and we'll see, but I don't know.
I mean, they brought in the TBI. I don't know if the FBI as well, but...
I mean, they brought in TBI immediately, just because. Which, again, that's one of those things to be, all right, I get it. I understand the gut reaction to go to, this was a hate crime, this was a crime of political means or whatever, we need the TBI to escalate this to the next level. But it's like, you're going to call on the TBI when my house burns down, when you don't know if it's arson or not? I'm sorry, and especially in the state of Tennessee, it's backwards, but whatever. That's one of those things that I resent. Like, we've talked about it. I can't remember what it was. I think it was a police officer that died in the line of duty or something like that. Oh, yeah, that's right, because Massey had co-sponsored the bill, is that in the state of Tennessee, as of sometime last year or whatever, if a officer gets shot in the line of duty or gets if a crime is committed against an officer in the line of duty, that the state will offer more in reward than they will for a regular one. Like, the state will kick in an additional amount from on top of if, Knox County Sheriff's Office has a $10,000 reward for officer whatever, whoever shot them, the state will kick in another $10,000 or something like that. And it's like, okay, I get it. But it's like, officer whatever is a citizen just like me. Why does he get preferential treatment? Which goes into the same, this is why I bring this up in this Planned Parenthood. Why? Because it's Planned Parenthood, because it is a specifically contentious thing. Does it get more effort and attention from the state than my house would or my business would if it had burned down? Because, I mean, maybe I misread it, but my understanding of it was that the KFD said that they called TBI in specifically because of what it was, because of who the victim was, for lack of a better word, before the fire department had done any arson research yet. They said, basically, this is a big deal victim. We need extra guns.
No, I didn't read that. I don't think they would call them first thing. I'm assuming we did our own indication. It was like, I smell gasoline. Like, maybe we should call the
I'll see if I can find it after the show or something like that, but I'm fairly confident that in the first story from either Compass or Knox News that was on it, because I first heard about it, Jesse had posted it on his personal page before they had actually done an article on it in the Compass.
Yeah.
And so I already had, it was already flags up and I was paying attention. But I want to say it was the Knox News article that said that, communications officers from Knoxville Fire Department said that they'd reached out to TBI and somebody else or whatever, and they had, while it was still burning, they hadn't even started any of the investigation process yet, and they were already reaching out to other peoples to help with the investigation. Which, again, I understand the logic of it, but are you going to do that with my house or my business? No, because I'm not a controversial national organization that has, political clout that can lean on different people here and there to get more attention. And that's bullshit. I mean, that's just the bottom line of it. That's bullshit. Just because you're Planned Parenthood and you're a national organization and you've got lobbyists that'll go lean on whoever they can lean on because you don't make it a big deal right off the bat. That's not justice, and that's not fairness, or that's not whatever phrasing you wanted to put on it. That bothers me. And that's one of those things that we as a most part just look the other way on. It's like, yeah, makes sense. No. Any crime should be treated the same regardless of who the victim is. I guess that's my thoughts on it, at least.
Okay.
It bothers me. It really does. Like, AC made a good point on the cop one.
I don't know why it bothers you that much.
I don't know how. I guess I don't know why. Like, this is one of those fundamental differences, I guess, because I don't know why. I can't imagine how it doesn't bother you. You are less important. If you are a less important victim to the Knoxville Fire Department,
yes,
if your house burns down.
I am a less important victim versus a police officer or a firefighter. Yes.
Well, this one's not even a firefighter.
They do more good for the city than I do.
You're right.
I'd love to see them get preferential treatment over me.
Right. So we need to put a moral hierarchy in place where certain people are more important and more special than other people. I mean, that's what they talk about. They're talking about doing with vaccine, or not vaccine, but at least COVID treatments. Is if you're not vaccinated, you don't get to COVID treatments because you're too stupid to take the vaccine. Because that's the world we want to live in, where other people, other places get to pick who's more important than not.
They've started denying people COVID treatments because they're unvaccinated? They
haven't started. It's been a conversation. I mean, AC said it point blank on here. That's his argument, that if you're too dumb to get the vaccine, then you shouldn't get the treatment if you get sick.
Okay. Opinion doesn't equal fact.
That's not. It's not a singular opinion on AC's part. It's a broad opinion, and a lot of people are arguing for it. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened yet. You're right.
I mean, I think I mentioned it on not too many episodes ago. I hate to think that way, but it's like somebody that you've been telling them to quit smoking for years. They're like, hey, you're going to get lung cancer. And they're like, I'm not just going to keep smoking. Just going to keep smoking. They're like, oh, wait, I need lungs. And they're like, man, we told you to quit smoking.
Right, and that's the world we live in. Where's the line? Where's the line? Where's the line on activities that you're okay with somebody else telling you that you are and aren't allowed to do? It's a slippery slope argument, which everybody hates. But where's the line? Are they going to tell us what we can and can't eat? Are they going to tell us how long we have to exercise every day under punishment of fine or jail time or something?
Hey, Biden's still trying to take your burgers, man. You better hold on to your ground beef. He's going to take it from you.
I mean, he's actually doing some good for the ground beef industry, but that's a separate conversation. But
it's just poking fun at some stupid bullshit. I think that was earlier this year.
I mean, he's actually it's not very much. He's trying to get like $1 billion grant in place for small meat processors to try to get some competitive footwork in on the market, so that these 4 big meat packers can't keep doing what they're doing. What they need to do is they need to have truth in labeling, but that's a separate conversation.
Well,
that's the start.
They busted the 4 major chicken. I think can't remember if we talked about that on an episode. 4 major poultry producers colluding with one another to keep prices high.
Mm-hmm. I remember talking about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, that's my problem. It's like, okay, fine. I'll agree with you on this one. Smokers, you don't get lung transplants. But then what's the next thing? There's always going to be another thing.
And they do it for a lot of stuff in health, or especially with transplants, because there is a very
right. You can't continue to smoke and get right. You won't get a heart transplant if you continue to smoke. They'll put you on the list.
Transplants, you've got to be alcohol free for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, but that's just as much for the functionality of the transplant as it is for, people that didn't actively kill their own liver getting preferential treatment over people that actively killed their own liver.
Take it.
I would say that's as much the reason that a liver transplant, an alcoholic on a liver transplant list is lower on it than a non-alcoholic, and that you have to have a period of that significant period of sobriety or whatever before you're eligible, is just as much for functionality of the replacement as it is for not a punitive. That's not the right word.
To an extent, yeah, because you got to be on some pretty hardcore medications that keeps your body from rejecting that new organ.
Right.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, but again, going back to the core point of it is like I don't know. I mean, you know, the illusion of freedom or whatever you want to call it, that we're allowed to make our own decisions. You know, it goes back to we were joking about like the pedophilia thing that the.
Well, I mean, talking about like a slippery slope. I mean, you're saying there should be no safeguards to any decisions that anyone can make.
Describe what you mean by safeguards. There should be no consequences? I don't understand. What do you mean?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, sure. No consequences.
Right, there should be there's a consequence for long-term smoking is that you have to get a lung transplant or you have lung cancer and you have to go through chemo and all that stuff. It's still a consequence. Now, that goes to a whole separate conversation on whether the state should be the one to provide you your health care or not. You know, and I get the argument of, well, if our tax dollars go to paying for your health care, then we should have the ability to make decisions on how you damage your own body. But again, I think that's a weird thing all over. Yeah. That's one of the reasons I don't like the idea that the state controls healthcare as much as it does and wants to control it more. I think that's a problem because I think that's a natural tendency of the humanity. I don't think it's a fault of anybody, because I think it's a natural tendency. At some point, somebody's going to hold on a second. Our taxes went up this year, and the major cost on that is healthcare. And the leading cause of death among white males or whatever is like heart disease, and that's from being fat alcoholic smokers. We can't let people be fat alcoholic smokers if we're going to pay for it, so let's force them to not be fat alcoholic smokers. It's a logical conclusion.
You're advocating for that?
It's a logical conclusion. I'm not advocating for it, but it is a logical conclusion for people to make. To say, hold on a second, our tax dollars is going towards what? We should have a say in what our tax dollars are doing, and I don't think it's fair that I'm paying tax dollars so that guy can make bad decisions. I get the logic behind that argument. I disagree with it, but I get the logic. And the more the state controls healthcare, the more that argument becomes attainable.
Yes, I mean, I don't see the state having any kind of stranglehold over healthcare.
Currently, no. But I'm saying that's what that whatever. You're missing the point. It's fine. My point is that as the state can get some more control, we get to Medicare for all kind of thing. We get some of the other programs that people are talking about, which again I'm not opposed to in general terms. But that is a concern I have, is that as it becomes more a product of the state, the more healthcare becomes product of the state, the more the state will want to have influence on how we live our lives, on the decisions we're allowed to make as human beings.
I mean, I'd ask somebody on TennCare that's been on TennCare a while if they've been affected by any of their choices have been limited, just specifically being on state-funded health care.
Right, but that's with state-funded health care against other health care that exists. If state-funded health care is the only one that exists, if it is a straight line as any taxes go, which doesn't matter. I mean, realistically, it's tax money. It disappears into the ether. Nobody understands how it goes, where it goes anyway. But I don't know. Again, I've heard.
I'm trying to go down your logic of a state-sponsored health care. Trying to give you an example of TennCare that's been around for a while, state Medicare.
Right.
And there's quote-unquote limits on, what you can use your EBT card for, but you and I both know that you can still go into gas stations and buy sodas and chips and all sorts of junk food on that same EBT card.
Right.
I think they've limited some things you can buy in EBT.
It's just alcohol, tobacco you can't buy. Pretty much just everything else.
That's what I was thinking. I thought it was pretty much just alcohol and tobacco.
Right. Because, it's not food or drink, technically. Even if you eat it.
There's water. There's more water in beer than there is alcohol, man.
That's true. I mean, there is more water in a beer than there is a bottle of Jack for equal volumes of liquids. I don't know how we got where we got.
We meander.
That's what we do. It's cold as shit.
Hey,
David Hayes got arrested, and that was a big hullabaloo. Planned Parenthood is now presumed arson and officially categorized as assumed arson, as opposed to just everybody assumed as such. Elections are coming up. I didn't get into it, but I did. Let me see if I can find this post. Rhonda. Where'd you go? Rhonda Lee is running for District 7 County Commissioner. She put a post up that I found interesting. It says, according to the Sycamore Institute report, in 2020, over 3,000 Tennesseans died from drug overdose, a 44% increase over 2019. Knox County has the state's second largest drug overdose fatality rate. Pretty bad, especially when we're now top of the country in murder per capita to boot. She says... You
say Knoxville has the second worst in the state?
Second highest drug overdose fatality rate. Knox County has the state's second largest, yes. Second in the state.
All right, gotcha.
As an attorney with criminal justice experience, I see firsthand the tragedy of the drug epidemic in our community. Supporting law enforcement is crucial in the fight against drugs. Not only must we keep our law enforcement fully funded, we must have a comprehensive approach, including treatment, to address the public crisis and tragic loss of life. And so I messaged her. She's an Eric Wader team member, I think. She's definitely a Republican. That's not a question, but I don't know if she's one of Eric's candidates or not. But I had commented on her post. Where did it go? I commented, it basically says, when you're coming on the show, I really like to talk about this topic in particular because, I don't know, maybe it's an inference on my side. It sounds to me like she wants more cops and she wants more illegal stuff. Oi! What? Turn it down. Sorry. I had to yell at the kids. Sorry, everybody. I had to yell at my kids. Anyway, it reads to me like she's more cops, more arrests, more people in jail for possessions and drug use and stuff like that, which I think is a terrible idea.
It hasn't worked that well in the past.
Right. And so maybe I'm like, again, I want to understand it. I want to understand what she's actually saying before I jump to the conclusion that is what she's saying. But I would like to know what she means by this as far as what solutions. And again, one of the questions to me, and it's one of the questions I'll ask 1,000 times, what, as a county commissioner, can they actually do on that topic? Because
I don't remember if it actually went through the commission or if that was a state thing, but I think they did get some kind of additional funding that was specifically for getting the Narcan and naloxone.
Right. If there's a funding thing, definitely a commission gets to sign off on it. But, you know, I mean, like, she's right.
That was the only instance I could think of.
You know, she's right. She says, keep law enforcement fully funded, which that's a fun little, gamey word of what does fully funded mean? Does it mean give the sheriff whatever he asks? Is it some fixed percentage number of total income for the year? What does fully funded actually mean?
Saying don't cut their funding.
And then comprehensive approach, including treatment, which that would be something the commission can do. And I know there's conversation about getting new long-term homeless drug rehab kind of facility back in place since Lakeshore's gone.
Right.
And so again, I don't know. I think it's I don't know. I think I'm curious what drugs are on this list of overdoses because it just gives a total number. So she posted a chart as well. So 2017, there were 293, 18, 294, 2019, 259, 2020, 383, and 2021 projected at the time that she put this together. The full data is not in yet, but it's projected at 380 in 2021. So, again, like she said, with 44% jump, so from 250 to 350-ish is the ballpark of the math.
I'd say a majority are opioids.
Right. I agree. Or fentanyl-laced stuff. I don't know. Like, does anybody go buy fentanyl? Like, does anybody go to their dealer and be like, hey, I just want some straight fentanyl?
Doubt it.
I feel like it's one of those that everybody knows that'll kill you. I heard that, I want to say it was the New Jersey.
I thought a lot of it was getting added in specifically, I guess, just to kind of, increase the high. Guys on that.
Well, the deal is
and
that
I guess it's that much more addictive as well.
Right, you lace it with you lace something else with a tiny amount of fentanyl. Because the thing about it is, fentanyl is easier. It's the same thing I've made the argument on weed for. Is fentanyl is so potent that a small amount goes a long way. And so if you're smuggling it in, or if you're trying to move it from place A to place B, a baseball size package, for lack of a better word, of fentanyl is a huge amount of fentanyl. That'll kill like a baseball stadium full of people. I didn't mean to make that all baseball, but I did. And so what dealers are doing is getting crappy, low quality, or not even really coke or whatever the other drug is, and putting just a pinch of this fentanyl in it, and people are getting real fucked up, and so they think they're getting their money's worth.
Yeah. And
so, but the problem is that, for lack of a better example, and this is probably documentable on this same thing, if I could find, if they look at it that way, is that you got a heroin guy who's a regular heroin user and has a problem with it, but for the most part is pretty good about, clean needles and an appropriate amount to get him really fucked up but not kill him, because he's been doing it for years. But then he goes and buys from his guy, and this one's laced with fentanyl, does his normal amount, and that amount of fentanyl kills him, where that amount of heroin wouldn't have killed him. And so, it's one of those, I don't know, to me, this is the libertarian too, is that it's, this is a result of it being black market, not of it being so bad. It's only bad, it's only getting to this because of black market. If we could get rid of the black market, and the only way to get rid of the black market is go full legal. Because again, it goes back to other examples in the past. It's like I think this one particularly, right now in the world we've lived in for the last couple of years, people want to escape their crappy life. I think that's a universal truth of all of humanity. At times here and there, we all want to just get away from the existence that we are. And some of us can afford to go places and do that, and some of us prefer drinking to do that, some of us prefer drugs to do that. But whatever it is, people are going to do it. And so by putting it underground and making it black market, you're making it more dangerous for the people that are going to do it regardless. Just like Colorado did a study on it, as far as in-state, local Coloradans. What is a person from Colorado called? Coloradan?
Wow. Mountain hippies? I don't know.
No. Anyway, the total number of pot smokers in the state of Colorado has not changed.
Right.
There's been a huge influx of people coming to visit, and pot tourism is a big deal. But it's not like the idea, and one of the arguments against it was, well, if you make it legal, everybody's going to start smoking pot, and everybody's going to be a loser hippie. And it's like, well,
I mean, you could almost argue the gateway thing. It's like, oh, well, we had, 200,000 potheads, and then, 1,000 of them moved on to harder drugs, but we, garnered another 1,000. So it's just, the potheads are just kind of, it's still a gateway drug, but we just have more new potheads coming in.
No, it's a gateway drug because it's access. That's always been my understanding of it. That was always my take on it. It's always because it's access. Is that again, it's the problem with the black market. When you're dealing with black market people, they're not interested in you and your life or whatever. They're just interested in selling to you, and they don't care. Maybe they do to some level, but at the end of the day, you're not going to go into a dispensary in Colorado and walk out with heroin. It's not an option. But you go to your black market dealer around the corner, he might have that, or he might have access to that because for whatever reason you want to do it on a whim. It's a different animal because you have access.
Yeah, I don't really buy into the gateway.
I think it's trash. I think the only thing gateway about it is the access point, and that access point being a black market dealer. Because
to me, I think it's more on the person. I think it's somebody that's to use the alcohol as an example. Somebody that starts out just having a couple of beers, but they want something just kind of stronger and they want to drink it more often. They kind of turn into somebody that's drinking pure grain alcohol every night.
Well, I mean, I think there is argument to say
we're starting out with weed. They're like, this isn't enough. Like I want more.
Right. I think there's that person, and I think there is a stretch. There's a certain number of people that once their willingness to break the taboo of, well, it's illegal, it must be illegal for a reason. Once they get into one version of an illegal substance, they're like, oh, well, this one's not bad. It goes into that trust in leadership kind of thing as well. Mom and Dad told me that this was going to kill me, and it didn't. What are these other things they told me to kill me that I really enjoy? And that desire to explore because you were lied to about a certain thing. And again, you have the access because it's a black market dealer who has, it's not like, you can't go into a gas station that sells cigarettes and be like, hey, can I get some weed? I mean, people do it. I've heard of people doing it because they think the guy behind the counter might be dealing or whatever. But, it's not even a thought process when it's legal to ask for something that's illegal. But if you're already dealing with somebody that's doing something illegally, what do they care? What are they going to do? Oh, man, this guy buys weed from me all the time. He came and asked me for heroin. I'm calling the cops.
Right.
I don't know. It's just
fuck that shit, man.
It's dumb. It's really dumb. I'm really mad about it too because I can't get any. I've gotten zero from anybody on any of the upcoming legislation. I've asked everybody about what they know as far as state level legislation because we have the specific the Delta variants of THC.
Well, you should be able to look up what.
I can't find it on the state website
on the table or whatever.
No, I have seen nothing for 22 yet, other than the first.
Right, but I mean, you could look up not new bills, but you can look in what's been in the past two sessions that's still on the dockets to be
stuff that got shelved or
waiting
summer session
for
or whatever.
second approval and triple approval.
Yeah, but I don't think
second readings.
My understanding of the one that I'm looking for is that it's brand new. It's going to be brand new this year.
Gotcha.
And I can't find I assume.
Right, I don't think it becomes public record until it's introduced into public record.
The second session of the 117th state legislature in Tennessee starts this week coming up. Yeah. I think January 12th. I want to say I saw that date somewhere. January 12th was the first where everybody has to report to Nashville and they go through all their kind of reorientation and new rules and guidelines and all the different changes for procedural crap that they have to go through and stuff like that.
Here's your office. Here's your desk in the hallway.
Right. Well, if I'm Gloria, I'm not even going to bother. I wouldn't even go to Nashville anymore if I were her. She's lost her job. I mean, she's already lost it.
She have to rerun in that district?
No, she doesn't live in that district anymore. And so, she was, my understanding of the way that's drawn, and this, according to Matt at least, is the way it's drawn, and it's not official yet, but the way it's drawn is that she is going to be, her residence is going to be district out of 13, where she currently sits, and where her residence is going to line up with the same district that Sam McKenzie is the current seat for, and so she would have to primary Sam McKenzie and then win the general in that seat to keep the job. But it would be a new job either way because she's going to be in a different district by number. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was trying to think. I thought I heard a story that was similar to that of someone that in the midst of redistricting and elections going on, that they were in a new district. I thought they said that they would still be a legislature until the actual next election. It doesn't automatically take them out. I may be misremembering. She's still right. She still holds the job. She hasn't lost her job yet. She still holds the job until, I guess they officially changed seats in like December of 2022. So she's still the representative for that district, the old lines of that district until December of this year. All right. Yeah.
But my point is that my point is she's never going to get anything done anyway. Not because she doesn't want to or she isn't trying to. She's literally super minority and like openly being discriminated against because of her party affiliation in the state house with the whole office thing and all the other different crap that they've been doing to her.
Yeah.
And so she's not going to get anything done and she cannot retain her seat. So she basically has already lost her job. That was my point. She's still getting paid for the $17,000 they make a year or whatever.
Right. Should read the James Webb Space Telescope, I guess, fully put everything out.
No, I have not followed up on that. I'm excited to hear it, though. Love it.
I think that happened yesterday, maybe. I was trying to watch video. I mean, looking at this like 4K HD stuff. Like I can't tell if it's a computer rendering or if it's.
No, here you go.
One of them. Then.
NASA finishes deploying the James Webb Space Telescope.
Yeah, I think they were like putting out they said it was almost like that. I forget what they called it. It was almost like Mylar, where it's almost kind of this thin, shiny metal which they said it would protect it from like little tiny meteorites, which I would think if it's anything, like Mylar, that, balloon material, that wouldn't be very strong. That was one of the hurdles that they were running into or that it could run into, was if it's just basically trying to unfold itself, if it kind of got stuck.
Right.
I think when I was looking earlier, it was like 600-something thousand miles away from Earth already.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Ooh, China found a hut on the moon.
Wait, a hut on the
What?
moon?
I found a hut.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just scrolling through my Facebook
I did
news
read one
stories you might
interesting
want to
story.
know about.
Did read one interesting story. What do they call it? Like the gateway to hell. It's it was started by like a mining in Turkmenistan. They were mining for something, and like the mine ended up kind of collapsing.
Okay.
So it's just kind of like this giant pit. And I guess I think they were drilling for oil or something, but they figured out there was a bunch of like natural gas deposits underneath it. So they set it on fire, thinking it would burn itself out. But it's been burning for like 2 or 3 decades now.
Nice.
And apparently the president has a really long last name, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Is tasked, I guess, his military and scientists to start trying to figure out how to put it out. But it's crazy, like the pictures of it, because it just looks like it'd be something from Star Wars or whatever on some desert planet, and the ground's just constantly burning, but it's just this giant pit. I think it's like 60 feet deep or 60 feet wide, maybe something like that. But it's just like the sand that's just kind of burning all around it.
Damn, that sounds like a gateway to hell.
No.
Like, quite literally.
Yeah, I think that's why they call it the gateway to hell.
Scrolling through here, local stories. There was a shooting at the Fountain City McDonald's yesterday.
Yes, saw that. It was like 3 people. I'm
gonna have to start carrying.
2 people that got shot at.
I'm gonna have to start carrying all the time. It's getting ridiculous. I want to be part of one of these shootings. Everybody else is doing it. Wait, that's not what I meant.
Feel left out.
Feel left out.
Nobody's shooting at me.
Okay, so here's a weird one, and I don't want to go down COVID rabbit hole with it, but I saw this today on SportsCenter. Kyrie Irving plays for the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
It's kind of a pretty big deal. Apparently, they have the best record in the league on the road, and the worst record in the league at home. Which
right, because they're not letting him play at home.
Right, he can't play at home because the city of New York won't let him because he won't get vaccinated. I thought that was pretty something.
That's something.
So
it's like with the world's number one ranked tennis star. This is basically in like COVID protocol in Australia.
Yeah, and he can't play some tournament.
It's kind of a weird thing. Yeah, they thought he'd already been given an exemption, but it was like their base. I think it's like their border patrol or their customs had him isolated.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I'm not. I think for the athletes thing or whatever, I think it's weird. I don't necessarily agree with the rules and stuff like that, but these are the rules of play. You deal with the rules you got. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, that they should let him play because he's a good basketball player, or let him play because he's a great tennis player. I think these are the rules that, especially like the tennis one, those guys travel a ton internationally and all that kind of stuff. All right, so just to not accidentally get on the COVID stuff, I've been working on my my job descriptions page, so almosagreement.com/job descriptions. If you haven't checked it out yet, you should. I need help. I need a lot of help getting it finished, but I've been working on it. So I was doing some research on some of the different ones. So the state legislature puts in rules on certain offices and their funding. Like apparently the mayor is required by law to make like 3% more than the sheriff in a given county.
What?
Yeah.
Weird.
Okay, so hold on a second. Guys. So the sheriff has to make or can't make more than the mayor, which I guess that makes sense. Like, but it's weird that it's a rule, like on paper. But there's like a chart of certain positions, and it's literally like statewide. It's percentage, like there's a certain salary by population. So like if your county has 100 to 200,000 people, the minimum that this job can make is X. It doesn't have a maximum, it just has a minimum. And so like I can't find the actual sheriff's salary in Knox County currently, but it's $144,863 annually minimum by law in the state of Tennessee, by Tennessee state law. I'm pretty sure they make more than that, but I don't know exactly what Sheriff Spangler's made this year. You know what I'm saying?
And they get a car to drive with lights on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and they complain about they can't keep, I don't know. I mean, it's really not that much. I guess if you break it down, you know, they're talking about, I think starting salary for a deputy is like 46 and benefits and all the other stuff that they get. And they get a car to drive around with pretty lights on it.
I would like to think if I was in that position that maybe like every other year I'd be like, hey, take half my salary and hire a new person.
Right. But they can't. I mean, I guess they could donate to the county in inverse, but then it's like, well, they lose the job or they get voted out or something like that. Or, I mean, because it's the sheriff, there's a maximum of 2 consecutive terms, and the new sheriff doesn't play that rule. You got to fire people. The county has to kick up more budget to the sheriff so that they can pay those people to stay. But anyway, it's a minimum of 144. I believe, if I found correctly, that Mayor Jacobs, as of right now, is making $180,000 a year.
At least that's what you think you found.
No, that's what he's at. I think that's his actual one. And so, like, if you go check out the website, I note it, like, as it's a minimum versus, like, it's just a number. Like, because the Board of Ed and County Commissioner, like, $17,000 a year. But, like, again, this once gets interesting. And I guess that makes sense if you think about it. Like, the trustee. So for the sake of conversation, the trustees' core job requirements, I found something that UT had put together, this big, huge, like 3,000-page PDF file on almost exactly what I'm trying to do in the more layman's version of it. But they actually, like, pull out, like, Tennessee code and all the different stuff on why certain people can do what. So the trustee generally acts as the treasurer for the county and serves his primary functions as collecting property taxes, keeping fair and regular account of all money on hand, and investing idle money, and just doing something with the extra money we have floating around that doesn't have a use. That's the entirety of the job, and that's $131,694 a year minimum. That's the job that I want to get. Or the county clerk, because I think it's the trustee and the county clerk and one of the other positions, because in a county over 400,000, basically, it's $131,694 minimum a year. That's one of those. I don't know specifically what our current trustee makes, or what Biggs is going to make when he takes the seat, because he's the only person running for it right now. But I mean, you know, basically you're the accountant for the county.
Yeah.
And so then what comes to me is, like, on this one particularly, it's like, okay, so other than investing temporary idle county funds, what can one individual do more than another? Because of the top 3 job tasks, it's collect money, keeping account of the money, and then investing the money. I mean, you collect the money, you collect the money. I don't know what, like, how would you, like, and again, this goes into the legalese of it, like, how can you collect it? But if you and I are both running for that, and we're talking amongst 2 people asking us, and we're trying to get the seat or whatever, and somebody says, well, how would you do the job differently than them? And it's like, well, I'll collect the money. I'll keep track of the money. Both of us are going to do that. We have to do that. That is the job. So, like, it seems to me like the only one that there's any real difference is, like, well, what are you going to do with the leftover money? If there's leftover money and you're investing it. Because that seems to be the only thing that's really flexible in the job as I read it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You know, and then the county clerk's another one too. It's like, it's the same deal. Like, this is also, it's this UT, it's UT Eli. I think it's e-library is what it stands for. But I've got links to it, and it's like, the county clerk. The county clerk has numerous duties, including acting as the clerk of the county legislative body, including motor vehicle titles and registration. It's basically the paperwork guy. Like every item of paperwork that you have to fill out that isn't specifically taxes for Knox County, this guy takes care of. Marriage licenses, vehicle titles, your home titles, pawnbroker licenses, marriage licenses.
Right, all goes through the clerk's office.
Right, certified copies of birth certificates. Some county clerks do driver's license stuff. I don't think ours does. Ours does. That's the DMV local has those. And so again, it's like one of those like, how much can person A versus person B functionally do that job differently? Like, I mean, I guess if like, somebody gets elected that's an asshole and he's vindictive and won't let his ex-wife get her tags on her car. I mean, what can they do inside the job differently from person A to person B? That's what I'm confused at. And sadly, I was hoping this job requirements would help me understand that, and it's actually making it worse.
As far as you think, if they had more responsibilities, they should be getting paid more?
Well, no, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand. Like, again, so the premise of we are hiring managers, right? We are hiring a person to do a job. Okay, well, trustee, do you have accounting background? That's about it. If you have accounting background, if you can work okay in QuickBooks or whatever, I think you should be fine at doing the job. Does that make it a $132,000 a year job? I don't know. But really, it's like, how am I different? Like, as a hiring manager, if I have 3 people in front of me asking for this job, what particulars about that individual am I going to use to pick on whether I think they can do this job or not? Because there's not a lot of wiggle room. It's really whether or not you have the mental capacity to do the job. What else is there it doesn't make sense that it's a popularity contest. I guess I'm pushing back. I'm like, why is this a voted position? I suppose. Like, how are you and I going to make a decision between candidate A and B on this job? They both have accounting backgrounds. They both understand the legals and whatever that they do. Like, there's what differentiates one from the other. One has a better campaign slogan. That's the reality. But realistically, functionally, to embetter us as Knox County residents, what factors would you care about a trustee?
I mean, I don't want to look at the experience, and that's where you kind of run into people getting voted over and over again because they're like, oh, I know that name. They've been the clerk for a while. Like, I don't think anything bad's happened. Let's let them keep their job.
I think realistically, when it comes down to it, too, is that again, the trustee is the accountant for the county, right? The guy that owns the accounting company doesn't necessarily need to know how to be an accountant. He needs to know how to manage people. Or she. I'm sorry. I don't mean to gender this thing. But you get what I'm saying? Like, you don't necessarily need to be a good accountant to be the trustee. It would be helpful, I suppose. You need to know how to do the core job that most of your staff is doing. Sure, that's helpful. But really, you're just a people manager. All the job is already set in stone. Money comes in, money goes out, money gets set over here. All you're doing is, plugging the paper trail into the system. The system's in place. So maybe a trustee can have a decision on if they want to put a new system in place. And maybe they can change some of the way the systems work. But I'd assume a lot of that's built into state law, too. That there's certain requirements that who's your favorite? The comptroller? Mm-hmm. That the comptroller has requirements of how trustees operate, how and what trustees do with information. They have to put it in certain places. If an expense goes out from the county level on an item, this is the category that item has to go into. I would assume most of that stuff is fixed. Like, again, I don't understand. I agree with you, like experience, but again, it's I don't know. I still don't know what the job is, and I'm still confused on how we are supposed to have a good, real understanding of the difference between one and two different candidates who are asking for this job. Because again, Biggs is a good example because we're talking about trustee. All right, Biggs, you've been on county commission for the last 4 years. You seem to be a pretty smart dude, but I mean, what are you going to do with the trustee's office that is going to change anything? How are you going to make it a better office? I don't know that position has that. So again, I don't know. This is where I get lost and I start repeating myself and mumbling because I'm very confused. I'm all ears, buddy. Hit me.
I think we just find ever more things to be confused about.
Because that's the word. But that's the word. That's what we live in, and I think that's the
I
problem.
knew something. I knew less about something I thought I knew a little bit about.
I mean, it's true, but I don't know. I get
all the fun out of voting that very few of us even go to do anyway.
I know.
You're just going to discourage everybody else from voting. You're like, you know what? He's right. I don't know shit. I shouldn't go vote.
Maybe that's fine. And if then becomes an issue, then I'm really going to run for trustee because then I might be able to win if only 50 people vote. I can get all 50 of our subscribers or whatever we have. Right. Max asked me. He's out of town. He texted me just out of the blue. He's like, "How many people we got?" He's like, "He's just sitting at this bar or whatever." And some guy was talking about starting a podcast and how easy it would be to get whatever. It's like, dude, I don't think that's true. We've been at it for a while. And I was like, yeah, but we also are a fairly unpopular subject matter. And
because we oftentimes have just a meandering subject.
That's true. But even when we stay informed, when we stay on local politics and stuff, that politics is unpopular in and of itself. Local, so realistically, people that are interested in, like I made the punchline of the joke I was getting to was that the longer I've been doing this, the more it seems to me that there's really about 20 active people and maybe 200 total people that actually pay attention and care about Knox County politics. Like really actually truly understand, care kind of deal. So honestly,
and most of those are people involved in the game.
Right. And that's the problem. It's like, so like we literally have hamstringed ourselves into an audience of 200. Was kind of the joke I was getting at. It's like, if we were hitting every person that actually cared and tried and wanted to be a part and wanted to understand better, it's only a couple hundred people. Yet we get hundreds of thousands of votes, depending on the election. You know, right. Hundreds of thousands of people voting. And so that's the window we want to get. We want to, like, the goal for the reason there's hope for me that we could have a somewhat successful podcast would be that 99,800 people that vote but aren't like well invested in the game of the 200 people that we mentioned earlier, like that window of people that wants to lightly know a little bit more about what's going on but not get fully invested like the 200 people, that's our target demographic.
That's true.
I mean, it really is, because I
think we've kind of stuck to that.
That's who I am. I mean, that's really what it comes down to me. It's like, that's who I am. And that's what like, as this show morphed into more local politics with intent, is I am one of those 99,900 and whatever people that I've sat here and I've watched it from a distance, and I refuse to go 100% all in and understanding everything, because there's a market for those people and they already have coverage. It's people that want to have a little bit better understanding but don't want to know. Like, it's like, so my complaint about Hornbeck is that if you don't know all the players, his stories are hard to follow. But if you know what's going on, his stories are really easy to follow. I want to be the, hey, here's some stuff. You don't need to know much of anything to at least get a general idea of what's going on here. Right. Because I don't think any of the other sources do it that well. Compass, again, is pretty damn good, but outside of that, like, again, going way back, that News Sentinel article, to me, left out what I thought was the more, not left out, but left on the I think it was the last sentence of the last paragraph, is when they mentioned the Robert Bailey death in custody thing, which, to my understanding, one of the big reasons, I mean, I think, like I said, I think David Hayes and Constance and them were going to go out and be part of this meeting anyway, but I think it turned up the heat a little bit because of the recent incident. And the way the News Sentinel put it in the article was like, it was just kind of a throwaway. Oh, and also they were a little upset because this guy died in custody. And it's like, well, hold on a second. That was a big part of what the current fire is about with this group of people. And I just think, as per usual, News Sentinel missed the mark. I didn't mean to go all the way there like that far. Point being, there's 99,000 people we're trying to get to here.
We're trying to reach out and touch.
Yeah, we need you. But I don't know. Again, so that's why I got the clerk's office. I've got a bunch of general framework in place for the judges and the chancellor, because apparently a chancellor is basically a judge, but it's a non-jury judge system, something or other. I'm not sure what that is, but we have circuit court, criminal.
And there's chancery court or whatever.
Right. Chancellors, general sessions, juvenile court judge, and then register of deeds, circuit court clerk, criminal court clerk, which again, paperwork people. Like, I don't understand. Like, again, I just don't understand why some of these are elected offices. I'm all about voting for people, but I don't know. Billy's the criminal court clerk. He files the paperwork. He's responsible for getting the paperwork when the DA or a criminal attorney asks for paperwork so that they can, do whatever in court. Like, it's just. It seems to me that it's a.
It may have been a position that used to be appointed until. I mean, my first guess would be just kind of trying to keep away corruption.
I agree with you. It's just my assumption is on a number of these is that it is a rigid job. That as long as you are capable of putting, it's like there's standardized tests, but you know the answers. You just have to fill out the answer form correctly. That's what I assume a criminal court clerk is. There's no option because I'm me that I'm going to do the job this way versus that way. It's literally when evidence is logged and we have transcripts from courts, they go into a file, that file goes into there. And so it's accessible to X, Y, and Z. When the DA asks for a copy of the file, you go make a copy of the file and you send it to the DA's office. That's the job. It's not a job where Billy could do it differently than Johnny. That's my assumption on it. And I don't know this, and this is what I'm trying to learn on these particular ones, but that's what it feels like to me. And going back to, the trustee or the clerk, it's like this is a rigid job that is all set forth by the state and the county already, whether it's charter stuff or whether it's state law. This is what you do. This is how you do the job. What was the lady? It was the lady in Kentucky, or was she in Tennessee that refused marriage licenses for gay couples or whatever?
It was in Kentucky.
And so like that was her exercising her individuality on the job, and what happened?
She lost her job.
Exactly. Because the job says you issue marriage licenses. It doesn't matter who's getting married. That's none of your business. People come in, they meet the criteria to get a marriage license, you give them their marriage license. As of yesterday, it's legal for gay couples to get married if they fit all the criteria, which now they do, issue their marriage license. It's a rigid job.
It's not the courts. It's not you're interpreting the laws.
Right. You just do the thing that you're supposed to do with the job. And again, I don't know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but that's how I understand it. Like, I guess, some of the stuff from the county clerk in like professional licensure, but most of those come from the state. Beer permits, I mean, I guess if you got like a teetotaler that was a county clerk who refused a bunch of beer permits. But again, I don't know if they have the grounds to refuse it unless they can have, documentable reasons why they're refusing beer permits.
Well, beer permits go through the beer board, liquor board.
I mean, it says on here it may be different. County clerks
Maybe she's the final rubber stamper. Overseeing
the issuance of beer permits, marriage license, and pawnbroker licenses. Some county clerks contract with the Department of Safety to issue driver's license. No. Yeah. Fellas. So it doesn't. I don't know. It does from the synopsis that I pulled from the UT e-library thing. Let me see. I put a link on it. Oh no, my link's bad.
It may be a generic use of the word issue.
Yeah. Like they actually
it comes out of that department and gets mailed out.
The commission signs off on it, and they that's actually probably exactly right. Good call.
So you could say it's issued by the clerk.
The beer board. That's right. The beer board, which is under the county commission, approves your beer license, and the clerk issues it. By issues it means physically sends it to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Good point. I think you're spot on. Whew. That one hit a little funny. Sorry. It's just King's Family Distillery hitting me like a freight train.
But
yeah, I think it's
quicker.
I think it's. I mean, I told you last week. Beer's off the diet for me. So, but again, that's one of those things I'm confused about. And hopefully I can get. I guess the moral of the story is I need to get Jesse and Hornbeck and Scott on here, and we can sit down and we can all kind of hash through this, and I can pick their long-term grades.
What do you know? What do you know?
Right. I mean, that's literally like, I mean, Hornbeck wrote the school board one for me, which is, you know, the 4-year term, $17,000 salary, votes on all policies and procedures to cover the operations of the school district, selects director of schools, has oversight on 2/3 of the spending in Knox County's tax dollars. You know, and then they cannot hire or fire any employee of the school district except for the superintendent. They cannot implement or ban any classroom curriculum, and that's the whole critical race theory thing that I want to make sure that people don't try to run on. Must adhere to federal and state education regulations. That was when Horbeck helped me write.
You got to follow the rules that are already in place.
Right. Which, again, I mean, they have little stuff on, like... Again, a lot of that stuff seems to be like, I don't know, like I've tried to watch meetings and stuff, and it seems it's really all the little ticky-tacky stuff that's not really that important. Yeah, although I think one of the big ones that just happened in school board this past week, though, did you hear about this one? At their meeting, like one of the things that they do is they set their legislative priorities once a year. Which is basically they make a list of things that they send to either their lobbyist in the, you know, certified school board lobby group, or they send directly to Massey and Zachary and Manis and, you know, all the different reps, all the different state reps, whether it's Senate or House, on their whatever. And apparently for many years in a row, opposing vouchers was one of the top priorities, like regularly on their legislative list. It is not on the list this year. So my prediction that vouchers are going to be a big conversation point, I think, is coming hard and fast. And I'd like to talk to people.
Declared they aren't going to fight it.
Right. Basically, they're like, you know, we're not saying we want them, but we're not saying we're going to pitch a fit if they bring them on. Which, you know, I mean, and I've already seen a bunch of stuff. The Knox Dems Facebook page has done a bunch of stuff that, you know, these school board members that are running for office or running to, you know, like Christie's running to keep her seat. She's actively trying to defund the schools boards by being accepting of the idea of vouchers or something like that. You know, candidate A, B, or C who's running as a Republican is pro-voucher. And pro-voucher means anti-school funding. Yeah. And it's like, I get the premise, but I don't. I really don't. Because as the BEP formula clearly states, they only fund a school that has the student.
Sorry.
They, you know, so if I take my kids out of school next year and get a voucher for them and put them in a different school, the school that they're currently going to is not going to get money relative to their absence. Now, does the voucher equal the amount that the school's not getting? I don't know. But at the end of the day, from the state level at least, if the state puts in $5,000 per kid into the school that they go to, and I don't send them there next year, that school loses $10,000 because I didn't send them there. Whether I send them to private school or homeschool them or whatever I do with them, that's here or there. So yes, by physically taking students out of the school, you're taking monies out of the school, but it's relative to the number of students. So I think I'm still trying to understand the details on this one because it gets really convoluted real fast.
Right.
But yeah, but yes, as far as is it a true statement? Yes. By allowing vouchers, you are actively defunding schools because people will take up vouchers, which means they take their kids out of school. That defunds a school.
I think the main point, I guess, that kind of gets pushed in that is people view it as if public schools are getting that money, if parents take their kids out of public schools and put them into more well-funded private schools, then the private schools are getting that much more funding and public schools are getting less. I think that's
right.
On those people that are against it. I think that's kind of
it's a subsidy for all the people
on it.
Right, and it's a subsidy for all the people that can already afford private schools because they're just going to keep going to private schools and pay less
All right.
because they're going to use their voucher for it. When realistically,
So there's a lot more to it.
I would think private schools are going to go up in price immediately upon a voucher, maybe even relative to the amount the voucher is.
You think so?
To hold that exclusivity, sure. For some schools, maybe not all. The question really to me is that if we're going to allow vouchers, are we going to change the requirements for opening a school? Are vouchers going to be available for parents to homeschool? Can you, I think it's collective schools. I don't remember there's a term for it, but could.
That's what I was just thinking. I think it kind of started with the pandemic. There was a lot of like parents that were kind of getting together.
Right. And either.
Kind of have. And I think they did file it as some kind of established schooling to still make sure that, you know.
Right. State requirements are
whatever
being met.
grades they got.
Right.
Well, you make sure they would be accredited. That they weren't just
right.
wasting a year on paying private teachers to come in and teach the kids, that they were actually.
Right, because I might start,
valid.
Depending on what the rules are in place, I might start a gypsy school where it's, you know, I have a couple teachers on staff and they go and do some things at students' houses as a group, where all the students go to Jimmy's house for a week and they do all their schooling there, but then they go to a different house for a different week or different, you know, focuses, or I bring in, you know, I have a series of teachers that focus on different things. So I have one teacher teaching math, or maybe a higher level math, that teaches it here, and then another teacher teaches there, and just spread it around and do different stuff. I don't know. There's options. Whether the state lets those options open up as part of the voucher is what I'm curious about, because that's problematic to me. If they just open vouchers and don't change any of the ability to make more private schools easier and more affordable, then it's going to be. Then I think it's gross, because then it doesn't change anything. And then it truly really just defunds schools, because, like we were saying earlier, because it doesn't put any competitive advantage to. It doesn't put any competitive pressure, or it doesn't put the same kind of competitive pressure on the public school system as it would otherwise.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Again, I think, you know, you could take a public school building and you could sublet a certain number of classrooms to a private group. And you could, I mean, are these options available? Probably not. And it's like, why not? You know, I'll rent a wing on a school and hire teachers and do my school and just rent the building, and that'll get some money back to the school system to spend on what they want to spend it on.
Right.
But, you know, my school can teach what we teach and how we teach it, and can let my parents have input on it or not, or whatever the fuck it is. I think it is a good example of branding as far as how they're selling it already, as a parent control kind of thing is one of the verbiages that they're using a lot. Or,
all right.
And the idea of that, and that, you know, well, of course I want to control what my kids are learning. Of course I want to have input on my kids' education and stuff like that. Because
the county can't tell me where I got to send my kid to school.
Right, because what they're doing is
pick whatever school.
Right, what they're doing is they're implying the inverse of saying, well, if you don't vote for us, you're voting for them, who are trying to control you and your kids. It's like, well, that may or may not necessarily be true, but the implication by saying school choice or parent input, because like somebody made the good argument, it might have been Gloria. You know, it's like, you want input on schools? Go to meetings, join your PTO, do all the things that you have input on currently.
Right.
Just because you're upset about a certain thing going on right now, which I still think is weird. I think it's weird that the mask mandate's still in place in the Knox County schools.
But trying to be a backseat driver.
Right. Or, yeah, like, I mean, if you want input, there's room for input. Right. The problem is, the real problem, I mean, and again, that's a misleading way to put it too, is that you don't have individual input. You have general input. And I think go ahead.
In what little reading I've done on it, as far as like the education value, I don't know if it was necessarily done in Tennessee, but, you know, there are some states that have had, you know, quote unquote charter schools for at least a few years that there hasn't been any kind of increase whatsoever. A lot of charter schools are like, oh, we'll have better funding and education will be better. When, I mean, there's no real disadvantage to the charter schools, but there's also no advantage to it from all the ones that have been studied that have been in place. That's another thing that's touted by proponents of it. They're like, oh, it'll give us broader range and we can make it a better school.
I mean, I'd like to talk to somebody who has a specific knowledge on voucher system maybe the voucher system they're talking about here, or some of the other school style programs that are available or would be potentially available in a voucher system or whatever. Because all I've heard so far are people that are very strongly against vouchers. It's like, I respect your opinion on it. I follow what you're trying to say, but I have no counterpoint. My counterpoints are all assumptions, like I rolled off just now. My assumption and my philosophy on how I think the world should work is all I'm basing on my openness to alternatives. Is, again, even like Jennifer Owen, who's probably one of the most vocal people locally, especially now that she's losing her, she got zoned out of her own district or whatever for this year's coming up election or whatever, or maybe she's the next one anyway. Doesn't matter. But she's very vocal against vouchers, and she has a compelling argument for it. But I have no counter, other than I haven't heard any counters. Not to say they don't exist. I just don't know anybody that's actually using or has a data-based, counter argument to hers. And so it's like, I get it. I see where you're standing on it, and I see where you're coming from. I need to see somebody else.
Right.
Because my point of view on it is, I don't know. Because, again, even Jennifer Owen, one of the first times I talked to her, I was like, we can all agree that it's not doing as good as it could. And she's like, yeah. And it's like, well, doing it the same way, thinking we're going to do better somehow, and then, because I think for not the first time, second time I had her on is when we were talking about, I hate the argument of the school. It's just more money fixes the problems in schools. And it's like, I get it, but I don't know that that's a fair statement either, because you have clear examples, countywide, technically, according to McPherson, was like, the schools that we spend the most money at tend to have the money to, statewide at least, the higher per pupil spending in a school district is actually inversely relative to the data point outcomes. So like the higher ACT scores, the higher reading levels, all those different things tend to come out of the lower input counties.
Yeah.
And, and it's because the reality of it, then this is one of the true things in schooling and society in general that I don't think anybody wants to talk about it, is the reality in it is that we put too much on the schools on what they're supposed to do, other than teach our kids how to think. We put too much other social services in the school systems instead of letting the schools be schools, and then let the social services be social services. And so the schools that have the higher spending per pupil are not on education, they're on social services.
Such as?
Whether it's, lunches or, it's where the school is a functional daycare because the parents are working, or whether it's, mental health interventions because there's either the kid has a mental disorder, or there's an emotional issue because the household at home, they don't go home, they don't eat when they're at home, those kind of households. And all that kind of pressure lands on the school to fix those problems, where none of those things are education. Those things are, broken homes and, poverty and stuff like that.
Right. Those specific things I don't think would cause the school itself to be having to cost more money to actually run that school.
I mean, there's a certain number of social workers.
I don't think the county gives them more just because you have more kids on subsidized lunches or free lunch meals.
The county doesn't, but I think the state does. I really do. I think the state.
I think that would factor into it.
That's part of the BEP formula, is the ability for the county to pay more, and like the average it's a super complex, like average income of the county, average income of the actual school districts itself and stuff like that. It goes into it. Outcomes, like the average outcomes or the specific outcomes from a certain school change the way it's funded. As I understand it currently, they didn't let me be on one of their advisory boards, so I don't know. Mm-hmm. I get an email.
I know there was talk about that for a while years ago, that poor performing schools would receive less funding, which I kind of thought didn't really make sense. It's like, okay, well, if the school's doing shitty, you're cutting their funding. That's only going to make things worse in theory.
Right, but at the same point, you don't want to incentivize poor performance either.
Right.
You get more money if you do a bad job. And so, again, I think that's one of the things, too, is that I don't it's a weird, I guess this goes back to one of my universal truths is it's an incentives game. And it's a hard one to incentivize because how do we get better performance out of schools when you take money out? Not specifically take money out of the conversation. Yeah. And let's pretend like money isn't the main motivator for people. How do you get better? How do you incentivize the school to do better? And then, like you said, well, the disincentive of taking money away because you do poorly, that doesn't make sense either. So what is the incentives that we need to put in place to demand better performance out of our school systems? And I think that's that's the valid conversation that needs to be had. How do we incentivize this better? And I think that's what my generous outlook on why this voucher conversation is up right now is that is an incentive that is intended to be an incentive for the school districts to do better in order to keep more students so that they can keep more funding.
Okay.
That's maybe too generous, though. It may just be Governor Lee likes Catholic schools and wants them to be bigger and more profitable. Because that's been inferred at least by a person or two.
I know we've talked about it before, trying to dig into, what is actually a true cost of, running a school. I mean, is it keeping the lights on that's really, really expensive at some places and less expensive at others? If that's, causing a large flux of how much a school costs.
Right. I mean, according to Ron McPherson, the number one, the biggest single category of cost is labor. It's teachers. They're they say it proudly that 60, 70 something % of their total budget is payroll.
Right.
And I think that's, I don't know what the right number is. I mean, that's backwards from normal. You get into normal, standard business budgeting, 20%, 25% is your target for payroll, depending on the industry, of course. But, just general retail or something like that, 20% is usually a good working number, maybe not perfect per industry.
Is that going all the way up to, the central office workers and whatnot?
It is.
I guess they would still be considered part of the school system.
Yeah, I mean, that is payroll. I mean, they're people that get paid.
Right.
And that's, but I mean,
when they're breaking it down by school, I'm wondering how they're looking at that.
Right. They don't. They don't. I asked that. I can't remember who I asked about it. I know I asked Ron about it, but a couple other people too. It's I would like to see,
like the superintendent's budget. Is that coming out of the school system's budget?
Right. Which I think I think the superintendent's salary is the number one salary in Knox County. Because I think his is more than 180.
More than the mayor? It's great. And he probably gets free school lunches whenever he wants to.
Yep, approximately $215K, according to WVLT. And this was December of 21, so.
It was last month.
Yeah. School board approves a $200K year salary. This is back in 2017.
Yeah. Now they're trying to figure out how much they're going to be able to offer the new person coming in.
Yep. Yeah. So, that's a number that the school board gets to make up. They get to create that number and what they think is the right number for that job. But,
I mean, it's a complicated subject, on its face. I mean,
see, but again, I mean, that's another one too, though.
How do you put a dollar amount on, educating essentially, the future of the city, the county, and the state?
Right. No, I agree that it's. I agree that it's a high value. It's a high value area of government usage, whatever you want to call it. It should be a high percentage of budget or whatever. But at the same time, how much range does the superintendent have to do? Again, because I understand it, it's mostly it's a personnel management. He does a lot in the hiring and firing of teachers. He does a lot in implementing what the school board tells him that they want to do policy wise. He has to balance what the state and federal school boards or whatever you want to call them hand down, and how to get that in place inside our system. But it's like one of those, again, talking to school board people about what are the qualifications to them for the job, and a lot of them want teachers, and it's like, well, it's a management position. Yeah, I agree that it's useful to know what the trench job is that you're managing over, but to me, I jokingly said it a bunch. I was like, I want a lawyer. Let's get a lawyer that can sue the state for us and oversee getting more funding out of the state, because the state's not funding what they said what they're obligated to. Wouldn't that be a better, use of that job, is to go out there and fight the state for what we're owed? Because again, it's a personnel manager. It's not, they're not a teacher. They don't need to teach. They don't need to know how to teach to manage the school system. They've got to oversee like the transportation department and the budget department, and and then obviously the personnel department, which handles all the teachers. They've got to be able to hold an audience with a bunch of teachers. But do they need to know how to teach a third grader English? But that's a job requirement that people want. And I don't know if I agree with that in principle. I don't know either. All right. Let's do one more. What else you got?
Olympics is starting in, last I saw, 28 days?
Yeah, it's February 12th or something like that. Yeah.
Fast approaching.
The WBIR bumper trailers or whatever they're doing for it are pretty sad. They're pretty ridiculous. The missus made a good point. She's like, they're asking me to trust them.
I think I did see one.
It's like one of the weather guys walking around the studio in like downhill skis, which are probably his personal skis. But
did have a funny tinfoil hat theory hit me the other night. I've talked about it before. You're just like watching TV and just seeing these commercials that don't make sense.
Okay.
Kind of have the thought that some of the focus groups that ad agencies or whatever go to, like, hey, tell us what you like and don't like about this commercial. If it's them just like hating their job and just putting out like, oh yeah, that's a great commercial. Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, I picked that cereal commercial. Like, that's a good one.
Right.
Just as a kind of like FU to either the general public or the cereal maker.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I assume it's like a lot of other things. Like there's a certain kind of core people that they consistently pick to be in focus groups because they're kind of generic and check most of the boxes of a focus group or whatever.
Right. And they're
it's always like the same focus group people that everybody keeps borrowing to go around there like, I'm tired of having to like watch all this stuff and eat all this shitty food. Like, you know what? Fuck you.
Right.
I'm going to give you guys some shitty commercials and some shitty food.
Well, I mean,
always asking me, like, why don't you go figure it out for yourself?
I mean, the takeaway to me would be is like, obviously it's working. Kellogg's isn't going to keep hiring a ad agency to run focus groups and create ads for them if
with anything,
Kellogg's doesn't think they're working.
I mean, no matter how well things test out, I mean, you're always going to have things that flop for the general public and things that do great that they didn't expect to do well.
I agree, but I'm just saying, if you're Kellogg's and you're like, you have your board of directors gets together and you set your annual budget for marketing and advertising or whatever, and your head guy in advertising goes out and hires all these different groups to put together ad campaigns and stuff for you. They do data somehow on it. They track it, and because like some of it's like, especially the new age stuff, like you get Google, like you can look at like the
Google Analytics
and say, we ran this ad during the Super Bowl, and within 24 hours of that ad running in the Super Bowl, we jumped up, 100,000
clicks,
100,000 search points, or maybe not clicks or likes, but like searches in Google for, whether it's the ad itself or whatever it is. And so there's obviously analytics that go with it.
Right.
I think the tinfoil hat really is that they think we're that stupid that it works. And they're obviously, again, same kind of deals. They're obviously right.
I mean, we're pretty impressionable people. Mm-hmm. I've talked about it before. A lot of these ad agencies have social psychologists like on the payroll.
Which is why somebody else should make all our decisions for us, because we're malleable people. That goes back to the pedophile thing a couple weeks ago.
Oh, gosh.
Do you remember?
Not specifically.
Because we were talking about how, like, you know, the age at which you're capable of being swindled by other people is you know, that's the whatever age it is that you're no longer capable of being manipulated by others is when you should be a legal adult and be able to do what you want with your life.
Yeah.
And so the joke at the time was, you know, well, never. So who gets to make all our decisions for us if we're never capable of making our own? I think and this is a way broader thing to make a new topic at play. I think that the federal government specifically, but I even think the local government on some levels, and the biggest of big corporations think and treat us like we're stupid. And apparently we're dumb enough to let them do it. Because, I mean, like the Pelosi thing about her, did you say this was a couple weeks ago now, about her stock thing? Did you see that interview with her? I think it was a presser she was doing about something and somebody asked her about it.
I think I may have read something on it.
Yeah, I mean, Nancy Pelosi, of all people, was basically leaning on free market on why her husband should be able to trade on her insider knowledge.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's not free market, sister. If you're telling him things that you get privately, confidentially, or secretly or whatever because of your position in government, it's not free market. You can't make that argument. It's bullshit. And it's contemptible that you would be so brazen to say that out loud and in public that you're not even going to at least try to politically spin that in some sort of way, that you're just going to basically be like, nah, I can do what I want, and I'm going to cite some bullshit that you're going to believe because you're dumb. And apparently that was enough for a lot of people.
Hold her to the fire.
I mean, there's a handful of people that are trying to, but it doesn't seem like, you know, she's not in any, as far as I've heard, at least on some of the national politics that I follow, that she is in no threat of losing her seat in these midterms in San Francisco. You know, and it's like, I don't know, like I would say that if I could get a straight answer out of Matt or Daniel on some of the national figures of their party, that they would say that person does not represent the Democrats that they know or Republicans that they know, respectively. Just to stick on Matt for a second, because we're talking about Pelosi, I would say if I could really get a straight answer out of Matt on it, that he would say that Pelosi is not a representative of what a Democrat is supposed to be or should be acting like or something like that.
No.
But because it's on his team, you can't say it out loud because that puts doubt and whatever and all that bullshit. Trying to get Daniel back in here for one more. I've already talked to both of them about helping me get some candidates.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. I've had a few conversations with a few people trying to get some scheduling together. I'm still trying to figure out what my schedule is now that it's back in school, back at work, that kind of stuff. See what it's usually a little bit slower time of year for the day job, so I should be able to squeeze a little bit more in the early afternoons. We need to figure out a time to get the whole crew back together. I still got Christmas presents for you fucks.
Oh, goodness.
I know. I like her questions. I think I'm sticking with, I think definitely number 5. If anybody listening wants to add some ideas, but I think I like the general premise of will this be, okay, so we're talking about, 5 questions that we want to have, that we ask every candidate, regardless of position seeking. And the short list we came up with was, will this be the highest office you seek? Is this your first elected position you run for? And then in the more ridiculous, favorite ice cream flavor, maybe favorite beer or a hobby or music or a dream job, something like that. Favorite place to eat here in town, favorite local attraction, somewhere in that. And then I think you have the greatest funny idea, at least, of doing the stupid classic SAT word problem or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so I think the one I was at, if a bus leaves the downtown terminal at 8:45, traveling north on Route 7, which I don't even know if that's a bus route, and an Uber leaves Carnes Rotary Club at 9:12, which I don't know if Carnes has a Rotary Club, what time does the Weigel's milk truck reach the Summit Hill station? Thought that'd be funny. I like it.
It'd be funny to do a riddle, but it would get kind of like ruined if you couldn't do the same riddle to everybody.
Right. Well, once
eventually somebody's going to be like, oh, I already heard that one. I already know it.
Right.
You're like, damn it.
Right. And I can't sandbag all the episodes and just release them all in one day.
Right. You want to give somebody an easy riddle and somebody else a really hard riddle.
Right. But I think it's to say, I don't know. Like, that's why I like the idea of doing a nonsense one that has no answer, because then it doesn't matter. oh, I heard you do this before. Like, as I was thinking to myself, I was like, I'll be like, I'll have a pen and a piece of paper and a calculator sitting next to their chair while they're here and be like, all right, so this last one's a word problem. There's a pen and paper there if you need to take notes, and then go through that stupid word problem that makes zero sense. Because it's a joke. These are the jokes, people.
There's some that are meant to kind of make sure you're even listening to it. Like, all right, a train's going, 60 miles per hour. It travels for 2 hours. How far did it travel? It's not real simple math, but you have to be like really paying attention to it. Really,
right? Are you?
You're anticipating a much harder question when they're asking you just to regurgitate what was just said to you.
Right. AC had a good suggestion too. What's your favorite person from the opposing party? I think it's I don't know. I think it's a. Oh, I think it's. It'd be an interesting. It could produce some interesting answers, some good conversation points. Yeah. The only problem with that, though, is I'm going to do it at the end of the episode. If I do it at the end of the episode, and it actually is like, oh, that's a good one. Let's talk about that. And it's like, oh, well, I got to go.
I would foresee a good bit of hemming and hawing on the first question. Not really hemming and hawing, but
just kind of the bullshitty politics answer of, is this the highest office? Will this be the highest office for that one?
Well, that just remains to be seen. I'm more focused on how this term's going to go, and then we're going to take things from there.
Right. Well, I mean, like the perfect example is Miss Oster is running for County Commission seat 3, I think, and she ran for State Senate seat 6 in the 20 election. She was appointed to the Sheriff's Office Merit Council thing back over the summer of last year, and like specifically asked during that, was she planning on running in the 22 election? Mm-hmm. To which she said, like you were saying, well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Right now, I'm focused on what's in front of me, and right now, this is what's in front of me.
I mean, that's what most people are going to say,
right? And that's why when I was fishing in our text chat about that, is like, if you have a question, like if it's a question like that, what's the follow-up? Because, like AC's like, well, you got to push them, you got to grill them on that kind of stuff, because they're going to give you that bullshit hemming and hawing, as you said, answer. Right. And, because, I mean, Oster would be an easy one. It's like, well, is this the highest office you're going to seek? Well, I'm going to do what's in front of me right now. It's like, yeah, well, that's what you said to the Merit Council, and here we are. And like, it's a fair, I mean, I think it's a fair follow-up question to it, but it's like, that's a very specific one for one very specific individual. But more than likely, Biggs, I mean, I didn't get Biggs when he was running the last time I had him in here. So had I asked Biggs that kind of question back in his last race when he was running for an at-large commission seat, had he said, no, yes, maybe, I don't know. He's now on record, and now he's going for a significantly higher office. It's like 9 times the pay. So like it's actually a full-time job as opposed to the part-time commission. But anyway, last call. Anything cool? Anything exciting?
Oh.
Go out to Pops and try this King's Ryconic. Well, you don't like rye that much. Right. But they have another one that they did that's a custom of theirs that's a blend. Or that's a corn with corn. I guess corn.
Corn mash?
Yeah, corn mash. This is rye, whatever, right? Is that how it works?
I think so.
I don't know. We need to do a special whiskey show with Max, because he knows his whiskeys and shit.
Yeah.
And what the difference in Scotch and whiskey and bourbon are. For smart people that care.
I think Scotch is supposed to come out of Scotland. I think it's also aged with peat. It has something to do with peat, I believe.
Right, and then whiskey and bourbon are the same, except one comes from Kentucky and one doesn't. Or one's from Tennessee and one's not.
One was aged in oak barrels. I don't know. Yeah.
No, but if I remember correctly, the difference in whiskey and bourbon is literally like it's like champagne is not champagne unless it's made from grapes from Champagne.
Yeah, from the Champagne region.
Right, and so like whiskey's not whiskey unless it's made in Kentucky. It's the same exact ingredients, the same exact process made anywhere else is bourbon, or vice versa. I think it's vice versa. I think bourbon is Kentucky straight or Tennessee straight whiskey. Fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's bourbon whiskey, and then you have Scotch whiskey.
Right, so whiskey is the process. See, this is why we need somebody smarter than us. Yeah. See, I like to prove every episode that I'm an idiot, and I just did it again. You're welcome.
We're just trying to remind you, we will know everything.
All right, Sam, you're doing the outro this week?
No, thanks.
You going to sing the song for me at least?
Nope.
All right, so January is moving fast, and we're on it. Another episode of Almost Agreement in the books. Like I said, check out the almostinagreement.com/job descriptions. That job description is hyphenated, job-descriptions. I'll put a pop-up or a banner on the front page of the website so that you can just click through from there to get it easily, or I'll put a link in the show notes of this so you can get there. If you have any corrections or additions you'd like to put on there, feel free to email us at almostinagreement@gmail.com. I'm going to work on getting that more detailed as I get more information and I understand things better, which will take forever and a day. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. We may or may not be on Instagram. We're on all your favorite podcast providers. While you're in these places, please like, share, friend, subscribe, follow, retweet, thumbs up, 5-star review, all those different things help us get the word out. I'm still talking with the Apostate people about trying to do a co-show with them because I guarantee you they're going to be talking about this David Hayes and other story that we were talking about earlier tonight on their episode this week because they do a whole section on cops being assholes, and so it's a good example. So anyway, we're almost in agreement, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you.